Hey, what's up guys? So, if you haven't noticed by now, I have a little bit of a problem with painting color schemes. In my first video, the Orc Randomizer Challenge, we took dice and we used that to determine what the color scheme would be. Now, in this series, I'm going to be looking towards you guys, the amazing community, and I'm going to be inspired by what you guys create and your amazing color schemes, and I'm going to try them for myself and yeah, hopefully learn a thing or two along the way. So I bought a bunch of like 30 termagants on eBay a while back, and I've just been painting them up randomly in between projects or just when I feel like a break and want to try out some color schemes and yeah, just try something new. So anyway, let's grab 3 of these little buggers and let's get into it. Now the first scan is inspired by Dipiopio, totally butchered that name, and here's Highfleet Iluyanka. Again, totally butchered that name. He did such a great job painting and basing his swarm that I just had to try it. Plus, a rainbow is quite symbolic of the diversity of my Tyranids, so yeah, kind of fitting. Plus, it gave me an opportunity to finally try out wet blending. Starting off with the colours, I'm using some of Army Painter's Pure Red, then some of Vallejo's Light Orange, followed by Instar Paint's IV29, which is very similar to Citadel's old Sunburst Yellow. Speaking of Citadel, we'll grab some Warboss Green. Next up is Army Painter's Viking Blue, followed up by their Alien Purple. Cool, so to start, I'm going to try and get my paints to a nice fluid consistency, not too thin and not too thick. And then apply a decent amount of red to the head. Very quickly, I'm going to rinse and dry my brush. This is much easier if you're a brush licker, by the way. And apply the orange to the rest of the blank area. Then clean my brush again and start working the 2 colours so they start to blend together. Then I add some more orange to clean up the blend, and apply some more orange to then transition into the yellow and then the rest of the colours using this same technique. I was trying my best to go as quick as I possibly could while doing this, so the previous colours wouldn't dry before I had applied the next colour, and make it difficult to blend. For my first time wet blending, this really couldn't have been a harder scheme to try and achieve, but you know, it forces you to do so many blends in a quick amount of time that I think it definitely helps to learn in a short period of time. And to be honest, the colours blend quite easily together, so it's not as difficult to get a nice transition. With the first layer of wet blending done, I'm going to take some of Instar's Sandstone Brown and use that to paint all the skin. I wanted to do this after painting the carapace, as I knew that wet blending would be messy, and that I could take more time painting the skin. And with that dried, we're going to give the wet blending another go and build up another layer. With this round, I was trying to focus my attention towards blending the colours, using my brush to blend the area where the 2 colours meet and not worrying quite so much on speed. This time I was applying the colours in stripes and then blending the 2 stripes together. This allowed me to work much quicker and more confidently than the first time.
Winds southerly at about 15 with gusts of 25 miles an hour. Barometric pressure 30.00 and is rising. And no precipitation. We're about a ½ inch behind, ½ inch ahead for the year, and 1 5300ths behind for the year so far. We'll be looking for.
And then repeated the whole process again, making the blends smoother and the colours more solid.
On the radar, however, the satellite photo was pretty interesting for the western half of the U.S. Rain showers and thunder showers along that frontal system. That wide band of fairly heavy snows. Now what will happen each time that you see the frontal system on there, that begins at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you'll see the cloud pattern move until 2 o'clock this afternoon. So as of that time, of course, the front was way off in the northwest. Now, however, it's moving into the central part of the nation with a couple of high pressure sections.
I think it turned out great. Now, there is an obvious transition with the orange and the yellow. Perhaps because yellow is a hard colour to paint normally, it's also harder to blend with. Or maybe I'm just a noob who needs to learn to blend better. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to take some Army Painter's Warlock Purple, which is a purple and not a pink, but get your stuff together, Army Painter. And use that to paint all the little fleshy details. Then I'll use some of Vallejo's Yellow Green for all the weapon energy cable bits. And finishing up with some AK Light Earth to paint all the bone and teeth. I was a bit hesitant to wash this model as I knew that it could very easily stain the model more than what I'd like and also bring the colours down, and I wouldn't really be able to bring the colours back up because I've got that wet blended area. Ideally I would have done kind of a pin washing technique, but I was kind of having difficulty with that, and you know what, I just thought, let's see what happens, see how it goes, and yeah, that's what I did. So I washed the carapace with some Army Painter's Dark Tone. And then wash the body with some Agrax Earthshade. And as I thought, this did end up staining and darkening down that blend more than I would have liked. Normally, I love washes, and since coming back into the hobby, I use them all the time. But what I realized in this instance was, with wet blending, you don't have a chance to layer back up, or it's at least very difficult. With the normal GW painting style, you base coat, you wash, then you start highlighting back up and working back in those layers, and you're able to achieve a real nice range of colors and contrast. Now, with wet blending, I couldn't see how I could build up those layers back up. You have a transition of colors and tones, and as well, by darkening it down, you're also changing the color. So this was something I kind of struggled with. Now, moving forward in the future, I think I'd really love to try oils and pin washing, because with oils, you're able to varnish the model and then get really precise lines into the cracks and crevices. Or if you do an all over wash with oils, you're able to use alcohol to then rub off what you like and don't like. I've never used oils before, but I can see that oils are a much superior wash than traditional acrylic washes. Moving on to our second nid, I first touched up the original paint job with some of AK's Light Earth. Now, these models were already primed this colour when I got them, and to be honest, some had better coverage than others. I'm then going to use Army Painter's Matte Black to paint the carapace and any sticky outy bones. Now, this scheme is heavily inspired by Cuttergut's Coconut Crab scheme, this time using 2 colours instead of 3. I really love how this technique looks. I've tried it out a few times in the past with different colours and it just always looks good. He has some great tutorials on YouTube, he explains the technique much better than I do, so check him out in the links below. I then mix in some Water Plus from Instar Paints into the yellow-green that was on my palette. This will allow the paint to flow more smoothly. Then I paint a wavy stripe down the middle of the carapace. Try to make it look as irregular as you can to make it more natural and not like hazard stripes. Now we want to paint spots over the rest of the carapace. Try to create a variety of sizes as this will help it look more natural. As we're painting yellow over black, this will take a few coats to reach full opacity. Just go carefully over what you've already done until you are happy. Once finished, this looks great. Mixing in some Water Plus into our black, we can now paint some black spots on the yellow. Do exactly as we did before, but make sure to focus on the border where the black and yellow meet, as this will help blend the 2 colours together. And with that done, we can finish painting the rest of the model. Again, I'm going to use our pink colour to fill in all the gashy areas. I then decided to paint the energy cables black. And also the teeth. I then used some Agrax Earthshade to wash the model all over. And with that, we're finished with our second nid. Time to move on to the third. For our last bug boy, I was inspired by this image I found on Google by Papa Chicken 137 over on Imgur. As always, links to everything down below. I really love the contrast here with the orange and the blue, and then the purple skin. So to start, I'll take our purple that was on my palette and base coat the skin. I also base coated the carapace, hoping to get a slightly darker blue than what I would have with the original base coat. Now, I really wasn't being smart in how I painted this. As you all may know, painting orange on blue is a recipe for disaster. Oranges and yellows can be really translucent and have terrible coverage. They can be an absolute pain to paint at the best of times, let alone when you're painting them over a contrasting colour. Now, I was hanging out in a Froglane Studio Twitch, links below. Mr. Frog is great. He literally stopped what he was doing to explain to me how he would approach painting yellows. And his approach was to paint in stages. So instead of going straight into the orange, if I had painted a bone colour, or say Avalan Sunset, a colour that has good coverage, then it would be easier to build that colour up to the orange and not take so many coats of orange to build up opacity. Mr. Frog has a wealth of knowledge, so if you ever have any questions or want to know how best to paint something, seriously go check out his Twitch, he's great, highly recommend him. So what I actually did was I used Vallejo's light orange and painted thin lines along the edge of the carapace and slowly built that up. It creates a much nicer finish layering up thin lines like this. However, if you want to go a bit faster, you can just paint a solid line along the edge. This will still look great, it just won't have that scratchy effect that this technique uses. Also, try to paint the ridge in the middle and the outer edges a little bit bigger than the rest, and try not to be super uniform with everything. Again, this just makes everything seem a lot more natural. With the carapace done, I'm using some of the pink for the gashy bits, as we've done before. Then I'm going to use some of the yellow-green for the power cables. And then some AK Wine Red to add some colour to our little tootsies. And then finally, some of our bone colour for the gnashers. To wash the model, I'm using some Army Painter's purple tone, diluting it a bit with some Water Plus, then slopping it all over the model. Cool. And with that, we're done. Overall, I'm really happy with how these guys turned out. I think for a first time wet blending, I think I did really well. Obviously, there's lots of improvements to be made all around. I could have pushed things a lot further than I did. I didn't really highlight much. But, you know, to be honest, at this point in my hobbying journey, I'm just happy to get 3 more models done, painted on the shelf, looking good. And when I've got a whole swarm of just random ass colors, you're not even going to notice. And by painting 3 different color schemes, I really did learn a lot. Working with oils in the future is something I'm really interested in. I also feel more confident to try more wet blending. And obviously the biggest thing I've learned is not to paint yellow over blue or orange. Except I did it twice. Anyway guys, that'll do it for me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. And then, finally, some of our bone... and then some, and then...
No ending!